All right, we're ready to flatten. Okay, the next thing we need to do is add a little bit of chamfer on the edges that we're going to exit our cuts with. So I'm going to be flattening from this side of the bench. I'm going to be cutting in this direction. I want to take a little bit of material off of these two edges with either the setup joiner or a block plane with a little heavier cut. All right, I'm going to keep this block plane handy because we'll need to keep an eye on these two edges and make sure we're not getting close to square again. And if we do, we'll take another few swipes to kind of make that edge a little bit safer. Last thing you need is either a lumber crayon or a big fat carpenter's pencil, and we need to put some witness marks on this slab. So I'm going to basically draw a line down the center of each ply. This will allow us to see how well we're making progress on the slab as far as flatness, but also how well our strokes are overlapping. If you start traversing this slab and you get little short chopped marks of black, like a dotted line all down the length of the bench, it's because you're not overlapping your strokes enough. You need to make sure that each stroke cuts right next to where the other stroke cuts. Okay, now we're going to do a quick survey of the top just to kind of get a feel for where the low spots are. It's just a way for us to develop the vision to see these things, and then as you plane the bench, you should get confirmation. So I've got a high spot here and here. Now it's twisted a little bit, and now it's high on the outer edges. Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. Okay, so with the exception of this little corner right here, I should see this plane cut on the first pass on either end. And then as we progress with each pass, that freshly cut surface will migrate to the middle and then will be flat. You can also check along the length. But because these slabs were sanded in a wide belt, rarely have any issues in that direction. That's something for after a couple of years when the bench has sat and it's had a chance to kind of settle in. Sometimes you get a little bit of movement in that direction. The biggest thing that we're correcting for is if you have a top rail that was slightly lower than the tops of the legs, that causes the slabs to kind of drop in the center. All right, we're ready to actually start taking cuts. Remember, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And grab yourself a trash can and have it close because you're going to generate a lot of shavings doing this process. I'm going to be moving forward and back and working my way across while the plane is skewed. And I'm going to put my hand right over the top of the mouth because the shavings will start to build up. If they fall out onto the bench, they'll get under the sole, and then you won't get a cut for that pass, and you'll have this random high spot in the middle of your bench. So here we go. Here's that first big handful of shavings. You're gonna get tear out in the top of your bench. Don't be afraid of that. My arms are burning a little bit. That's just part of the process. We can see there was that little low spot right in here that didn't even get cut. Another little low spot there. It's pretty clean on the front. That has a lot to do with the fact that I'm starting from the front edge until the toe of the sole of the plane hits this side of the bench. It can cut freely and then it lifts itself up. And then it's barely cutting here and then it drops out and then it finishes the cut there. So that's the first pass. I'm guessing by the results of this first pass that I will be able to remove all of the rest of this crayon in the second pass. If you're comfortable with how you traversed, you didn't get a lot of dashed lines, then I would say just start at the end and start at this end and work your way down again and see if it's all gone by the time you finish. If you had trouble getting a rhythm and maintaining a steady step over as you went across, I would say grab that lumber crayon or that pencil and put some more lines back on. If I can find mine, I'll do that. You can do the survey again. Just make sure that you keep the edge of the joiner in a single path of the joiner, because you've created a slight dish. If you've cambered your iron a little bit, you've created a slight dish. If you put it at an angle, you're going to see a gap all the way across, because the places where it touches are going to be really small. It's going to look like it's just sort of floating over the top of the bench. So if you want to check your work, just try to get it in one pathway and see how it looks. But I've learned to trust the process. I do my initial survey, I make my witness marks, I move systematically across the top of the bench, and when I'm done, I know that I'm going to have a flat top. I'm also going to put a little bit of wax on the bottom of this sole, because it was a little bit of work to push it. So that is our 90-degree pass, our perpendicular sets of passes. We're ready to move on to our diagonal passes. And I'm going to get a drink of water and take a break. All right, let's do that diagonal pass. We're going to take a couple more swipes down these exit edges. I also want to take a look at this edge here and these edges in here. Make sure they're not getting too shallow. They look okay. If they were getting shallow, I might take a chisel and just sort of make a slicing, planing cut across those edges. I want to go ahead and replace my witness marks. There are a lot of really subtle things you can see on the surface of this top, especially in the raking light, that they're really hard to get across in a video. I'm going to back the cut out a little bit, back the blade out just a little bit. Each time we move on this top, we're going to be taking a lighter and lighter cut. We're working towards a finer and finer surface. So this is what would be the first pass would be the coarse pass. This is going to be the medium pass, and then we will switch to a low angle jack, since we're fairly confident in the flatness of the slab, and that'll be our fine pass. So let's go 45 degrees. I'm going to be moving as close to 45 degrees as I can get as an estimate, but I'm going to skew the plane even further. Okay, now we'll go back the other angle. This is probably the harder of the two angles to cut. Okay, we just about got rid of all of the witness marks on that pass. These aren't brand new low spots that developed as part of the process. They're just very shallow. You remember I reduced the cut on my plane, so there's a chance that there'll be some really fine low spots that it can't reach down into. The only way to get those out completely is to keep going back and forth at an angle until they're gone. However, my specification for a flat bench top is 5/1000 over 2 feet, which is the length of this joiner. and we're pretty much there. So you could stop here. If you're happy with the surface, you could stop here and start using the bench. But what I like to do for my customers is I will start making now long passes across the length to get rid of this crosshatch. And it's not to smooth the top, it's to kind of get rid of some of the tear out, remove the crosshatch, and provide a nice uniform surface. I usually come back with a coarse sandpaper, like a 100 grit sandpaper and a random orbital, and just run it over the top to kind of scuff up the surface a little bit, because I'm not looking for a super slick top. I want a little bit of bite in the top. So let me get my low angle jack sharpened up, and we'll start taking some long passes down the length of this bench. All right, one more set of witness marks. This time we're going across the bench. This is not really about flatness, this is just about tracking our consistency as we move across the slab. That was a pretty light pass. I'm looking to see which edge, which side of the mouth the shavings are coming out on. So I can get the blade centered in the mouth. Okay, happy with that. Okay, that's the first pass across. You can see there's still quite a bit of work to do. So I'm just going to stick with it. If I find a board, one of these edges that does not like to be planed in the direction that I'm set up to plane it in, I'll just mark it with an arrow so that I remember to hit it the other way when I come back to it. And if you keep the mouth closed up, you keep the blade sharp, and well, that's pretty much it. A nice light cut. You'll get there without having to worry too much about grain orientation, except in some extreme cases. Okay, that's the second pass. Got some low spots here at the front. I'm not incredibly surprised by that. There's a tendency to kind of dig in with the hand plane when you're at the start of that long diagonal stroke. So sometimes you get low spots, you got to just work your way through them. That's 3. So I've got this ply here that is just not wanting to cut. It's really hard to tell which way the grain goes by feeling it. A lot of times, if your blade is pretty sharp and you just can't get it to cut, you're planing it in the wrong direction. So let's try going this way. And it just hung up right here. I was concerned that maybe it tore out, but it didn't. Yeah, it feels like it wants to tear out if I go that way, so I'm just gonna keep doing what I've been doing. Right, that's 4 sets of passes. So we got 7-foot long bench. We got 4 plies per 3 strokes per ply. So that's what, 27. Well, I'm just going to round that. 700 linear feet on that iron. Actually, let's be precise. Times 6 is 4,258. 658 linear feet of planing on one sharpening. So I'm going to probably make at least 1 or 2 more passes across this top, but I'm going to sharpen the blade before I do to make sure I get the best, smoothest surface I can get. All right, we're back. Okay, we got our last little low spot knocked out. The bench top is flat, and we are 1 step closer to being done.